Good morning, everybody. How are you? I hope you're fine. I hope you're well. Hope you're good. Please tell me how you are in the chats. Sienna and Judith, please let confirm if you can start your work. Please be sure. You can chat me up privately. Yeah, good to see you guys again. I'm fine. Merci bien. Okay. Oui, je vais bien. Merci bien. Thank you. All right. Okay, so now I'm speaking to the whole of Africa. So let's do something. My name is Udeme. I'm sure you guys have met me before. So let's do something very shortly. I'm going to share the link of this call in the chats right now. I want you to boss your own group. Grace, please open up the groups for maybe this morning. Please open up the groups. Everybody, please. I want us to boss the group. Let everybody know if we are here and we are starting. This is going to be the very last session for this cohorts. Remember, this session didn't hold last week because of a technical glitch that we had. So we are bringing that session now. All right. So yeah. So I'm going to share the link with you, and please send it to the groups. Share it with the group. Tell them we've started. If you are in the French, share it to the French. If you are in Portuguese, please share it to the Portuguese. If you are in the English, group 1, 2, 3, please share it there. Right. Thank you. Please let's do it now, everybody. I don't want anybody to miss this session. It's going to be only one. And meanwhile, if you are here, you're going to have if you are here, you're going to have French interpretation and Portuguese interpretation. But if you are on YouTube, you're not going to have that. If you're on YouTube, you're not going to have interpretation. So if you are part of, if you're a French speaker, call French speaker, and call Portuguese, please find a way and join the Zoom. All right. Then some English guys can join the YouTube because this YouTube does not permit interpretation. All right. Please, when you finish buzzing the group, just tell me in the chat done. Done. When you are done, tell me done. Or if you are French, c'est fini. If you are Portuguese, I don't know the word for it. Judith and Sienna, are you okay? Is
Yes.
Are you able to do your work? Judith and Sienna, please confirm you are able to start the interpretation.
No, we are not.
Hi, Odeme, Mama. Hi.
I've sent that stuff like 3 times now, if not more. Not quite sure why.
Odeme, can you?
What? Judith, please try it. Let's see. Okay, that worked. Judith, are you fine now? Yes, you're fine.
Odeme, sorry.
Sienna, I'm trying to set up yours. Just hold on.
Okay.
Please buzz the group, Let's know before we start. Okay. Maybe I'll just keep trying, right? And then see what comes. One last try. Okay, so I'm not quite sure we'll be able to wait. Sienna, I'm not able to fix yours. But let's start. I'll keep trying. All right, so I'll share my screen now. Please confirm you can see my screen and also confirm if you can hear the sound. And
as the guiding policies and frameworks as the African Union. And then secondly, we will look at some key gender concepts in education. Then we will have some questions and answers and discussions. And then finally, I will share some recommendations that you can utilize as champions and activists and change makers in your respective spaces.
please confirm you can hear the sound too. Can you hear the sound too? Okay, you can see the screen. All right, beautiful. So we are good to go. The French interpretation is ready. I'm still trying to fix the Portuguese interpretation. So Portuguese, I'm sorry for now, but let's see if that will work. All right, I'm still trying. All right, so let's start from
As the guiding policies and frameworks as the African Union. And then secondly, we will look at some key gender concepts in education. Then we will have some questions and answers and discussions. And then finally, I will share some recommendations that you can utilize as champions and activists and change makers in your respective spaces. Great. So, the African Union Agenda 2063, which I would like to believe you are familiar with, and if you are not, please get online and just search for it, African Union Agenda 2063. This is a bold vision of the African Union, a bold vision and framework guiding the work of the African Union. Where do we want to go as an African Union? It's even titled The Africa That We Want, right? And in it, there are different aspirations. And as the African Union CIEFFA, we subscribe to Aspiration 6, which calls for an Africa whose development is people-driven and relying on the potential of all its people, especially its women and youth, and caring for children. And this is important to note because as young people of this continent, and you as young people currently in this meeting, you directly fall under the ambition and aspiration 6 of the African Union agenda. We want to ensure that you are at the core and at the center of Africa's development. So basically, we cannot speak of Africa's development without centering young people. And for us in particular, because we are looking at education specifically, then we cannot talk about it, this potential and this development, without also talking about children. Because like I said, our work cross-cuts across the entire education spectrum, from early childhood education, which is for children, primary, secondary, all the way to tertiary level. We are also guided by the Continental Strategy for Education in Africa, which is commonly and popularly known as the CIEFFA. You can also Google it, or we can share these resources with the Impact Her team to share with yourselves. There has been CIEFFA 16 to 25, if I'm not mistaken, and it has elapsed, and there's been a rigorous stakeholder engagement process where there was a development of a new continental strategy for education. It's very new. It's going to be running from 2025 to 2030. And you should also look at that guiding framework so that you can see how to harness and also support the strategy, this ambitious strategy that is done for education in Africa. The CIEFFA strives to set up a qualitative systematic training to provide the African continent with efficient human resources adapted to Africa, therefore capable of achieving the vision and the ambitions of the African Union. And as a supporting document, we have the Gender Equality for CIEFFA, which is the just for CIEFFA, as a guidance tool to ensure that we integrate gender dimensions and perspectives to the CIEFFA, right? Because it's not enough to just have a strategy without also thinking about emboldening and mainstreaming and integrating gender insights within those strategies. We're also guided by the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, particularly Goal 4, which speaks to inclusive and equitable education and promotion of lifelong learning opportunities for all. And I think, as most of you would know, the United Nations Sustainable Development Goal 5, which speaks to gender equality of all women and girls. We also have the Solemn Declaration on Gender Equality in Africa, which was signed in 2004, and most member states are signatories. And we have the 2003 Protocol to the African Charter on Human People's Rights, which is popularly and colloquially known as the Maputo Protocol, which is basically a legal framework to ensure civil and political and cultural and environmental rights for all African women. And education is emboldened in the Maputo Protocol as a way of ensuring that women participate economically, civilly, politically, and culturally. And it's a very interesting resource for all of you to actually take note of. And most member states are signatory of this protocol, with some implementing and some obviously lagging behind in terms of the implementation. And for us to realize this commitments that I speak of, because these are frameworks, right? They are policies, they're frameworks, they are guiding frameworks. But they're also political commitments, because member states sign that they are in agreement with what those frameworks are speaking to, right? So in order for us to realize those political commitments, we require or it is required that we tackle some of the obstacles that ensure that those commitments do not come to pass. I'm going to give an example. If in all of these declarations and policies and instruments, international and continental instruments, we are agreeing as member states in Africa that we are educating girls, right? That's an agreement, it's a commitment. But then the issue is, what is stopping us from achieving that commitment? And we are seeing through member states, various member states, that access to education is minimal, particularly at secondary level. But it's not just access, it's also retention in the education system. Children can go to primary school, but are they able to be retained in the education system? And then are they able to complete? So it's a three-way process. There's the access, you go to school. There's the retention, you remain in school. And then there's the completion, you complete the cycle of schooling. And the completion, it's not enough to complete at primary school. We need to see children completing the entire life cycle so that they are deposited into the pipeline of the market, which is where now the harnessing of Africa's potential and development then comes from, right? So if you are entrepreneurs or you are activists or you are change makers or young leaders in your community, we need education to harness your potential in order for the community, your country, and the continent to reap the benefit of educating you. I'm going to stop here and just briefly look at the chat, just in case there's something that has been raised. And just give me a second, colleagues. Great. I am seeing that there's no specific questions at this moment, so we can continue. Great. So, in the education system, as I said, our topic is gender inequalities and stereotypes. There are different themes or different terminologies that are often thrown around. There's gender, there's sex, gender integration, gender sensitivity, gender transformative, gender equality, gender equity, gender stereotypes, gender bias, etc., etc. And sometimes we assume that people understand the difference between all of these concepts, right? But you find that that's not necessarily the case. We have had many examples where, as AU-CIEFFA, like I said, we are championing girls and women's education. We engage member states through their different ministries of education and ministries of gender. We get there and we are talking to experts, well, in quotation marks, experts, or we are talking to resource persons, or we are talking to people working in the field, and they don't have an understanding. Or we are talking to teachers even, and they don't have an understanding of what the difference between sex and gender is. It is conflated most of the time, and it makes the championing and the activism work around this quite difficult because we conflate the two issues. I can see. Okay, I was looking at questions and answers. I saw that may you have me put the presentation in presentation mode. I'm assuming it's okay now. Great, thank you. Just give me a second, please. Great. I'm not sure what's happening now. Okay, great. So, just give me a second. At very basic level, sex and gender are not the same, but they are related. Sex basically means the biological
What's
and the
happening
physiological characteristics, okay, that typically define female and male. So right? It's anatomy. And it has everything to do with chromosomes and hormones, right? And to put it very bluntly, these would be fixed and would be, like we said, the anatomic, the biological. So something like having the mammary glands, the reproductive organs as they are, that makes you a man or a woman, it's sex, right? Gender, on the other hand, is a socially constructed identity. And it is roles and expectations that are assigned to men and women based on those biological sex differences. So just because you have breasts and a womb and other anatomical characteristics that are linked to being a woman, then you are expected socially to not only behave, but also do certain roles and attributes in the community, in your household, in your family, in the different spaces that you exist in. Either it's in the school system, in the religious system, in the political system, in any other system that helps us to socially construct identities. Right? I hope that is very clear. So, by virtue of gender being socially constructed, that means three things. One, it would mean that it's fluid, right? Because it's socially constructed. Remember, social construction means that it is man-made. By man-made, I mean human-made. It's made by us as people. So, by virtue of it being made by us as people, it means that it would be fluid and it would vary with time and space and culture, right? So what our fathers maybe were expected to do in 1900s, for example, would not be the same as what they are expected to do or to be or to behave now in 2025, and similarly for women, all right? So you may find that because it is varied across time and space and culture, you will have other isms affecting it. I'm going to give you an example. There was a time where the concept of providing economically for families was solely reserved for men, right? Economical provision for families. There was a time it was solely for men. But as capitalism as a system starts getting into our countries and our cultures, I mean, there was a time we were not capitalist nations, right? We were socialists and other forms of community organizing. Then when capitalism comes, it's not enough to have just the men providing for the family, because women now have to also go and work and equally provide in the family economically. We are seeing those changes, right? We were seeing a time when fathers, for example, wouldn't exhibit, in quotation marks, a softness where they are maybe playing with their children or doing this with their children. But we are seeing all of that change because we understand that you can still play with your children while you are masculine. But there was a time, maybe when in certain cultures, that was not the case. So this speaks to the fluidity and the variation between time, space, and culture. This also essentially means the gender concepts and behaviors as they are expected in maybe a Botswana culture, and I'm from Botswana, would not necessarily be the same as maybe in a Burkina Faso, which is where I'm currently based, is culture and community. How so? because our cultures are also influenced by many other isms. For example, religion, right? So you would not expect how maybe a woman behaves in Botswana to be universally accepted. That's the point that I'm trying to make. So gender is also very reliant on the masculine traits, the feminine behaviors, etc., etc. This is a very important distinction, because then if we are not conflicting sex and gender, then we are able to get a lot done in our communities, right? So just because somebody, I'm going to be very blunt, somebody has a penis, that's a biological anatomic characteristic. It's fixed, it's a man, done. But just because of that, that doesn't necessarily make him automatically a good leader who then has to serve in parliament just because of that, right? And a woman doesn't need to then be stopped from being in parliament and exercising their political leadership just by virtue of them not being a man. So those two needs to really be separated, because, and it's important because they also affect how we access education. And I will get to this because it's very important. You have certain cultures and countries where children do not access education because they are girls. And like I said, we will get into it as we go. But you find that some girls don't go to school simply because they are girls. And when you listen into the reason, they say, oh, they're going to get married very soon, so why should we waste our money on them going to school? Right? And that's a gender that's a gender unequal reasoning, which then affects both boys and girls in different ways. Before I move to the next, I think it's very important for me to say this. Most of the time when we speak about these socially constructed identities as in gender, people think we're talking about women. Gender is not a woman issue. It's for both men and women, because we are also seeing how gender stereotypes and biases also affect men. And how is this possible? Like I said, I'm going to use the example of capitalism. If we are saying men should provide economically, right, by virtue of them being men, so what happens if that man is unemployed? Because we are seeing that there's unemployment. It's rife in Africa. So what happens? If we are saying a man is going to be stoic and rigid and does not speak about his emotions just because he's a man, that's a gender bias, by the way. It's a gender stereotype. If a man is not going to talk about his emotions because he's a man, how does that affect him? It affects him because it means that if he's going through psychological distress, he doesn't tell anyone. And excuse me? Okay, I thought somebody's talking. And the repercussion is that we see high suicide rates amongst men. It's a direct consequence of socially constructed identities, right? Right. I'm going to be here so that I can see some of the questions, and then we will continue. Ooh, I don't speak French, so I'm going to ask maybe one of my colleagues to look at these and good. Emmanuel Masinde, you're saying, have we done any research to know why we still have challenges even after African countries signed the Declaration on Gender Equality in Africa, in African societies on leadership roles and country leadership? Emmanuel, yes, there's been some studies done with the African Union, the Directorate for Women, Gender and Youth. They have some studies that are done. We also have some studies that are done by the Political Affairs Department looking at African women in leadership. But we also have some country-specific data that looks at why this continues happening, right? And you find that it's mostly the gender biases, gender stereotypes, the culture as we speak of it, because it's not enough to just sign the declaration. In terms of implementation, you can have signed, but if the implementation, which relies on the psyche of the people, is not in alignment with that signing and signature, that means then the implementation is going to be flawed. So does the gender concept...
A questão do gênero.
Does the gender concept include those who identify themselves differently? Yes, it does. It does because, remember I said gender is social construction. So it means that it's done by people, it's done by the society. The society is the right word to use. For you, it doesn't matter whether you self-identify or, because also now we're talking identity, is now who gives us this identity? Do we give it to ourselves? Are we given it? And a majority of us are given the identity, right? You are not born and then you decide, okay, I'm going to do this. You find that it's a well-curated system. Like I said, it cuts across the entire system and it utilizes different vehicles to what's the word? To concretize the identification, right? In terms of politics of identity. So it could be through religion, through media, through families, through so many avenues. But even if you identify very differently, the gender concept will somehow limit you in terms of what it expects you and how it expects you to be.
Uma construção social.
Somebody, Timachu, you said you don't understand clearly what is the difference between gender and sex. Timachu, sex is the biology, what you are born with, the physicality. It's anatomy, it's biology. And gender is the social constructions, right? The behaviors that
algo biológico, enquanto que o gênero é social.
I am hearing the translator, please. So I'm not sure if I'm supposed to. And then Salma, you are asking that the presenter turns on her video so that we can see her. Yes, you will see me, Salma, at the end of the presentation. And is there a country in Africa that doesn't support girls' education? There are many countries, and I don't know how to adequately answer this. Constitutionally, right, and with all these frameworks and principles, countries in Africa say that they want to educate all children. But the data that we have, the statistics that we have, show us that girls don't complete education, particularly at secondary level. And it's mainly because of early pregnancies, teenage pregnancies, early marriages and forced marriages, and sometimes poverty and economic issues. So that means that if we are having children who are not retained in the system and who don't complete in the entire education spectrum, it basically then means that the support is inadequate. And there are a lot of those African countries. I will try before the end of this to show you a basic graph where you will see about the rate of out-of-school children in Africa. All right. Why is religion called in one of the social evils? Brooke, I never said religion is a social evil. I said religion is a mechanism and a tool for socialization. Through religion, we learn behaviors that are expected. We learn attributes, and we learn on how to be in our society. That's not an evil. It's just a social construction. It's not just religion. It's education. It's media. It's a political system. it's the economic system, it's many ways. How do you learn how to be broke? The behaviors you as broke are exhibiting, where do you learn them from? So religion is one of the ways in which you learn how to be a human being in your society. I hope that's clear. Great. Why is the boy child ignored by society? Why are there no NGOs that support? Boy children, you are right. There is few NGOs and civil societies that support boy children. You are very right. And that's why just now I said gender is not a woman's issue. It's also a man's issue because boys are also affected by the gender and social construction. And I used an example of how we see many young boys, and older men suffering psychologically because they are taught that they should not speak about emotions. So they end up dying inside. And that's why suicide rates are high for men than they are for women. That's a gender issue. If we allowed boys to speak about their emotions, we can tackle their mental health issues. We are seeing drug addiction being high with the boys because they are not expected to talk about their emotions. You're supposed to be hard and difficult, right? That's what we are seeing. And anonymous attendee, we need people like you to be the ones advocating for the boy child, the people in your community to talk about it. You are the change and you can make it. Ernest, you're asking, how can we move beyond policies to actually change cultural norms that fuel gender inequalities, especially in rural Africa? Once again, Ernest, I think it goes with community building. The reason why we get educated in our different spheres, the reason why you as Ernest Mary, you are here learning about this is also so that you can make a difference in your community. It can start with you. You can look for support and you can now challenge some of the cultural norms. You can look at the key players in your community, engage them, and then you can come up with programs that can challenge gender inequalities, particularly in the rural areas. You can partner with religious and traditional leaders, the chiefs, can partner with teachers, can partner with schools, you can partner with the nurses, the public health system, and just create an ecosystem where you can challenge these things and change cultural norms. And remember, it is not immediate and instantaneous. It's something that takes years and years because it's a cultural norm. So it's deeply embedded in our psyches as people, in our psychology. So it will take years to undo it. Thank you. I am going to move. Allow me to move, please. Great. So we have understood biological differences. This is a small exercise for you of what is expected. Like I said, gender is expectations, right? Behavioral expectations and all of these. And now my question is, I'm just navigating this, sorry. Great. So this is a little exercise that we can do. I want us, I hope you can still see my screen. Aha, you can see my screen, right? So I'm going to call out a word and you are going to tell me without thinking too hard, the persons that it is associated with between men and women. Generally, let's say you don't know anything about these issues of gender and sex and anything like that. You are just sitting at home there in maybe rural Africa or whatever. And then I talk about a behavior and you tell me who you associated with generally. I'm going to start. When you hear logical, what do you think of? Men or women? You can quickly just type it. Men. Okay. I'm getting a lot of men. Catherine is saying both, but a lot of you are saying men. Absolutely. Logical, men. Right? I think I too would have said men. When you hear the word practical, who do you think of? Practical. The word practical. You can type your, I'm seeing women, men, women, men, women. Okay. Both. Okay. And this is interesting. I want practical. I want to pause here very quickly. And I'm seeing both women, men. And we go now to what we said about gender behaviors, that they are also culturally fluid, as in they move from one culture to another. So what is practical in one culture is not necessarily what is practical in another. So you may see that's what making people think, okay, practical, what does that mean? Because you also have to think what it means. So you are seeing women are more practical, men are more practical, women are more practical. Great. When you hear the word sweet, what do you think of? Sweet. Women. Nobody has said men. Nobody has said men. You see how you. So what if I'm sweet and I'm a man? So it's not allowed. It's not possible. But sweet is just that. It's a behavior. It's like being. It's a character. It's like being nice or being kind. It doesn't come. And earnest, you are raising something important. You say then it's like you are gay. So you see people who exhibit certain qualities then are stereotyped, right? Then when they're stereotyped, that means people then don't act sweet because they're scared of being stereotyped. So then you get hard people who don't want to be sweet. And the consequence is that we see violence in our societies, right? We see violence in our societies because now we are laughing and saying men are not supposed to be sweet or men cannot be sweet. So now we want them to exhibit something that is the opposite of sweet. And then we wonder, how do we have so many violence against women cases? Where's your face? My face is here. I will show my face at the end of the course. Hind Mustafa, it all depends on culture. Exactly. 110% agree with you. Let's do another word. Let's take confident. Confident. When you hear confident, who do you think of? Men, both. Women. Okay. Men. A lot of you are saying men. Absolutely. Let's go to compassionate. Compassionate. Women. Great. Let's go to gossipy. Gossipy. Women. And you're even laughing. I see laughing emojis. But I can tell you without fear of contradiction that men also gossip around. They gossip. They will tell you that, yeah, when I was in junior school, they will tell you that, that girl did 1, 2, 3. They were the ones always with the tea. Always. So now somebody says in recent times, men are leading in gossiping business nowadays. Yes, men gossiped in a coded way. And it doesn't matter if it's coded. Gossip is gossip. Or you call it information sharing. Anyway, the point I'm trying to make is that these are just behaviors, right? They don't come wired in a human being. You are not born practical or gossiping or logical. You are not. It's a learned thing. You learn it. It's a social construction. And then also we give it to whoever we think can do it better, right? So it's really, really interesting. Somebody says you can find podcasts online where men spill tea. Oh, a lot of them. So yeah, those are, and then I think let me take a last word here. Maybe athletic. I'm not seeing any. Okay. But we will continue. The purpose of this exercise was to really show you that these things are just human behaviors, right? That are learned most of the time. It is not, you don't, and who we attach it to it's just a matter of a gender stereotype where maybe in our societies you are taught that men are confident. So you automatically expect confidence in a man, right? And then when a woman is confident, we don't label it as confidence. We label it as maybe as arrogance, right? And maybe when there's another, logical. Earlier, somebody said logical is men, right? And it's a behavioral expression that is expected of men. So that's why even people say, okay, we are voting for men in parliament because they are more logical. But are they really more logical? And then you hear that women are more emotional. And then you look, you're like, but all the wars in the world, it's definitely because somebody was emotional. Somebody thought that this one is not respecting me. Country A saying I'm not being respected and therefore I'm going to launch an attack on country. That's emotion. Because if you were logical, you would understand the consequences of war on people's bodies and on spaces, on everything, on children, and you wouldn't take that decision. But we are seeing economies collapse also because of the political leadership that we have. We are seeing people go to jail because a man politician said, oh, they wrote about me in the papers making fun of me, and therefore you understand what I mean. I need you to think a bit deeper on what exactly does that logical mean and what exactly does that emotional mean. When I am being honest to how I am feeling, why is it a negative thing, right? It shouldn't be negative. And this is why I'm going to take it back to what I said about men and boys seeming as if they are left behind. You want them to be logical. You don't want them to connect with the emotion. They don't connect with the emotion, then they suffer mental health issues like depression, like alcohol and drug abuse, like the violence that we see in our societies, and we see the high suicide rates. So you see, for each word where you say it should be men or women or this or that, or it's associated with this, there's a consequence to that. There's a consequence to that. Women are not voted. There is a study that was done about women in politics in Africa. I think it was by the World Bank. And it showed that people, including women ourselves, we don't vote for other women because we don't see them as competent enough to lead us. So it's a social construct. We are also taught that we see ourselves that way. Right. So, Meso Mambama, you're raising something. You're saying that logical is thinking things through and applying the right solution in response to a situation, whereas emotional is the opposite. And that is wrong. That is absolutely wrong. And I am saying this as a psychologist. It is wrong. Emotional basically means you are also in touch with the emotional element that guides your life. Because when you say, I'm angry, I'm sad, I am happy, I am this, it's an emotion. It's an emotion. So just because a decision is devoid of that, it doesn't mean that it's the right emotion. Things through and applying the right solution and you see for each word where you say it should be men or women or this or that or it's associated with this, there is a consequence to that.
Il y a une
There's a
conséquence.
consequence to that. Women are not voted. There is a study that was done about women in politics in Africa. I think
Il
it
y
was
a
by the
une
Times.
étude qui a
And
été
it
faite par
showed
rapport aux
that
femmes qui sont dans la politique.
including women ourselves, we don't vote for other women because we don't see them
Des
as
femmes, et
competent
des hommes
enough
et des
to
femmes
lead
y
us.
compris ne
So
votent
it's
pas
a
pour des
social
femmes parce qu'on
construct.
se
We
dit
are
qu'elles sont
also taught
émotionnelles.
that
Nous avons été enseignés.
we see ourselves that way. Right. So, Meso Mambama, you're raising something. You're saying that logical is thinking things through and applying the right solution in response to a situation, whereas emotional is the opposite. And that is wrong. That is absolutely wrong. And I am saying this as a psychologist. It is wrong. Emotional basically means you are also in touch with the emotional element that guides your life. Because when you say, I'm angry, I'm sad, I am happy, I am this, it's an emotion. It's an emotion. So just because a decision is devoid of that, it doesn't mean that it's the right emotion. So there is nothing wrong with thinking of logic as the right solution, but also being very sensitive to the emotions that we have. And I'm going to go back to the issue of war. I know we were laughing talking about it because I could see the reactions, of the emojis. But war, people look at it as a practical solution. It's a logical solution. But there are so many emotions included. There are so many emotions included because there is an issue of dominance through war. There is an issue of somebody has been offended and they have to protect themselves. But there are children, there are women, there are men, there are boys who are being annihilated in war situations. And it speaks, I cannot name countries right now, but a lot of countries where there's conflict, there are heavy emotions there. It's not just about the economy, but even if it's about the economy, when we're talking about the economy, we are talking about poverty, right? Hind Mustafa, thank you so much for that. You are saying that's why it's called hate crimes. They don't come from logic, they come from hate. And hate is an emotion. You understand? So all of these issues, whether it's xenophobia, whether it's these gender-based violence, there is an emotion that goes into all of that. I mean, I'm digressing. That's an issue. That's an issue for another day. But that is the point that I'm trying to raise, that there's a consequence for now associating these behaviors, which are just societally learned in our societies. Great. Allow me to move forth, colleagues. I don't know how much time I have left, but I'm going to try to be quite quick. Great. So this we have already talked about, so it's going to be very easy for me to be quick. So gender stereotype, it's a generalized view or preconception about a characteristics that are thought to be possessed by, or the roles that should be performed by men and women. It's just a stereotype that, oh, Lorato, you're a woman, you're supposed to be sweet, you're supposed to be soft-spoken, and then person X, you are a man, you are supposed to be rigid and hard and this and that. And the gender stereotypes, they are, like I said, socially constructed behaviors and beliefs, and we see them in so many things, in sayings, in songs, in proverbs, in the media, in education, in drama and culture. We see them everywhere, in the school system, everywhere. That's a gender stereotype. It's a view. It's just a generalized view. It's not a fact, right? It's the same as maybe a racial stereotype. Racial stereotypes are generalized views about characteristics that should be given by whether white people or Hispanic or black people. They're like, black people are 1, 2, 3, and then they say what they say about black people. Or, white people are 1, 2, 3, then they say what they say about white people. But that's not a fact, right? And that's why we need to fight stereotypes. And gender stereotyping is a practice when we actually utilize gender stereotypes. We are the ones now gender stereotyping. So it starts from a belief. You believe that men should do 1, 2, 3. Men should be hard, and by hard I mean behavioral hard, right? Like they should not express anything, they should not talk too much, they should not do this, they should not do that. That's a belief that you have. It's a gender stereotype. Then gender stereotyping is when I now practice it. I practice it because I am doing it. I'm stereotyping now against these people. So I don't give opportunities. As an example, we've been seeing it where you say logical and everybody said men. So that means that now it's time for voting. You have 5 candidates, 4 of them are women, 1 is a man. Then you get there, you don't even read the manifesto, you don't even do nothing. You just decide that, we know that men are logical. So what that means is men are logical. So this man who's in this race for political office is more logical, I'm voting for him. You don't even know what he's promising you. Next thing, he's so corrupt and stealing all the money, and your community is underdeveloped and poor, but you don't want to give women a chance to lead because why? They're emotional. They are gossipy. They are this. They will not get the work done. They will this. They will. It's a practice, gender stereotyping, and unfortunately, it affects development, whether we like it or not. So now getting into the core of my presentation, which was really in education, right? Like I said, in education systems, we are seeing children out of school. We are also seeing children not necessarily enjoying or engaging in the education system the same way, both boys and girls. And how do we see this, right? We see it in curricula, in books, in textbooks. And I'm going to give you an example, a practical example just now. We will see in books, the curriculum that we have, it would reinforce inequalities and gender bias. You will find a book for standard 1 children with the man maybe doing something there, the woman doing something there, that reinforces inequalities and stereotypes. But you also see it with teachers, our teachers. Remember, our teachers are also people in our society. The same way we get socialized, they also get socialized. Just because they are not a teacher, just because they are a teacher, doesn't mean that socialization skips them. No. So you find that the teachers also, are a way in which gender biases and inequalities are strengthened are strengthened. And then we find it in subject choices. We know currently in Africa, currently as we speak, there are few women in the STEM line, STEM sector, science, technology, education, and mathematics at tertiary level, but also in the workplace. There are few of them. And why is that? It's because it comes from way back. It comes from primary school, junior school. You are told that as a boy, do design and technology. As a girl, do home economics, right? And it's just like an expectation. Even you as a child, you get to school, you see those options, you automatically choose home economics. Even if you love design and technology, sometimes it's difficult. Well, some are able to choose design and technology. And then you find that the inverse is true. There are boys who just want to do home economics, but they don't, because everybody's like, you can't be a boy and you're doing home economics. Why are you doing home economics? And people start laughing. Your fellow students, the teachers. But what if a boy is genuinely interested in home economics? What's the problem with that, right? So you find that the repercussion is that then in the education pipeline, we end up having fewer and fewer women in the STEM field, and then automatically even in the workplace of STEM, because our society doesn't encourage such. And then you also see it in extracurricular activities and choices, where the type of play that children are expected to choose, but also their actual play. Play is a critical form of educational development. Children learn through play, particularly young children, which is why in early childhood education, ECE, play is important, but also in education psychology, play is very important. And it's one of the ways in which you can share knowledge with children. So you see it. You'll be giving the little girl the baby doll and telling her to dress it up and bath it and do what to it, do its hair. And then you give the boy the truck to disassemble and fix together. Already you are embedding in the child that the boy can become things like a mechanic, an engineer. And then you are preparing the girl for some form of domestication. It's not a conscious thing. And I think it's important for me to say this. It's not like people get out of their way to say, I'm going to give this girl a doll so that she can learn how to play it. It's not that. It's a subconscious social thing, right? It's just a subconscious thing. And then we're also seeing it in online content during COVID-19, where a lot of content was created online. We saw a lot of it. And we are seeing it in the statistics of enrollment and completion rates. The African Union, CIEFFA, in collaboration with UNESCO, did a study on the status of girls and women's education. And I was part of the team that was working on that research. And the completion rates for girls at secondary level are very, very low. Very low. Wahidu Uru, you are saying, in your opinion, it's normal for nurse positions for girls. We can all something what is happening when men is doing that job. You are right. Remember, normal doesn't mean right. Normal just means something that we see often. We can see violence every day and it can become normalized, but it doesn't mean that it's right. So yeah, the question now has to be, why are girls choosing nursing instead of doctors, being surgeons and this and that, right? Why are we seeing a man being a nurse and then we are like, oh my God, I cannot have a man as a nurse. Like where does that come from? We have to also question that. Yet Zena, you're saying in the workplace, there's no equal room for men and women, even if women exceed in knowledge and skills. That is very true. That is very true, Zena. And the IMF and the World Bank report on skills last year, 2024, it actually showed that there's still biases in the workplace. Some countries, obviously, it's okay. There's the unequal gender pay. Women are still getting underpaid for the same type of work as men. Why? Because men are seen to be competent. I'm going to give you an example. It's very, I'm going to digress a little bit, but you can also think of it, okay? So, that very study done by the IMF, the one on skills and competence and gender pay, they were saying when there are adverts, job adverts, right? Let's say maybe for a bank, and that bank wants a finance analyst, and it wants 10 years of experience. The likelihood of a woman with 10 years experience, okay, let's say the job wants 10 years and it wants a master's degree in finance, right? And maybe some experience in banking, right? Maybe 9 years experience, but his are low in comparison to men would have maybe 6 years experience and maybe just a bachelor's degree. He will apply even when he can see that he doesn't qualify. And it's a psychological thing. It's because he just genuinely believes he can do the job. So he will apply. But for women, you think you need to meet the requirement before you are competent for that job. So you only apply when you have 10 years experience with that master's degree. So then you don't get the positions because you are not applying. But it's not deliberate. You are socialized that way to be, I don't know if I should say scared. You don't trust yourself. It's called self-efficacy in psychology, where you don't believe you have the necessary skills and knowledge to do that job. Meanwhile, men have more self-efficacy, even when they don't do the job right. He has 5 years experience with a bachelor's degree. He will apply and he will get the job. So please just apply for jobs, okay? Even if they want 20 years and you have 10 years, just apply. I'm just giving an example, but it's real. It was from the report. So please apply. And also negotiate for salaries. I know I'm digressing, but these things are gender related. So the self-efficacy, the men believe it because they're socialized that way. So he will negotiate for salary. You don't. You think somebody will look at you and think, oh, you are so brilliant, let's increase your salary. They will not. You must negotiate. You must ask. So these are some of the gender stereotypes, but that's in the recruitment and in the workplace. But they are very linked to what we are seeing in other systems, like the jobs, etc., etc. Yes, good. So, I'm going to move on to the next slide. I talked earlier about curriculum. So here, we are seeing it's an extract from a textbook. We actually extracted this from a textbook in 2023, which is used by some students in West Africa. And the question was saying in English, indicate the name of the institution that would be represented by the personalities here below. There's a minister, there's a president, there's a deputy. What do you see about that picture? Just very quickly, what do you see? They are all men. You are right. Wait. Sorry. They are all men here. So you are showing this to a child who's 10 years old. What is the consequence of this? If I'm a girl, it's me, Lorato, I'm 10 years old, and I don't know anything about these gender concepts, this psychology, this policy, African Union. I know nothing. I'm just a 10-year-old girl. And I'm seeing this. Do you think I would have interest in being a minister or a president or a deputy minister? I don't have, because already you are showing me as adults in my curriculum and in my books that people, you see, they don't look like me. So I can't aspire to something that I don't see. How can I aspire for something that I don't know is possible? But if a boy my age sees this, it's a man. So he thinks it's an automatic thing for him. So that's why his desire to run for political office would be high. He sees it, it's possible. And this is a book from 2023. We extracted from it. This is another example from a textbook in 2023, a children's textbook. It was talking about what women, what girls and boys think about. And here it was saying the girls were thinking about marriage and children and childbearing. And there's nothing wrong with family building and child rearing. There's absolutely nothing wrong. If you think that's your calling and you want to do it, by all means. But you should also interrogate the choice. Where does it come from, right? Because our choices are influenced by different things. But also, it's okay, even if you don't want it and you want other things. So we need to see those things also represented. This shouldn't look like it's an end all for all girls. And in the below here, you are seeing a boy who's dreaming about being a doctor. So what are they saying? Are boys also not interested in family building this side? Why does it look like it's a burden for women? And also, there's nothing wrong if this boy just wants to be a doctor, he doesn't want to build a family. But what about a boy who wants both? We are not seeing that for boys. So then we wonder, why do we have absent fathers in the homes who don't care for children? They saw these things when they were 8 years old in their books, and they were ingrained in their psyches. So we need to challenge curriculum for children. We need pictorial representations that can capture the imaginations of our future as Africa. Like I said, there's nothing wrong to dream this, but it's not enough for it to be here. We need more possibilities and more realities, right? Right. And then let me just quickly look at maybe the chart box, just in case I may have mixed anything. Great, okay. Gender bias, we have already talked about this, so I'm going to just quickly pass through. It's basically the perpetuation of stereotypes, as we said, across different domains, be education, be employment, be healthcare. And this healthcare one is very important. In my culture, for example, men don't love going to the hospital. If they have a headache, they will just stay home. Like they will not go to the hospital. They go there when they are near death. Like when you see him at the hospital, just know that the pain was so severe. generally they don't like going. And the reason why they don't is because they associate taking pain to the clinic as something that is less manly. And then women are the ones who, when you are feeling some kind of pain, you rush to the clinic or the hospital. But there's a consequence to this. There's a consequence to this, and it's documented that then you have these premature deaths of men who then generally normalize going to clinics, dying when they could have been saved, right? But the other side, downside of it again, is that you have the entire healthcare system that is not necessarily, it doesn't fully cater for women in terms of their pain. I know this is an emerging topic and I digress, but the issue of reproductive health, where some women have things like endometriosis and other fibroids and cysts, where when they take them to the clinic, they're told that, oh no, it's just period pains, be strong, go home. Meanwhile, they're suffering from something big. It's just a gender stereotype that, oh no, you can take it, go home. You're supposed to feel these. Meanwhile, it's something bigger. So we need to consistently and constantly challenge all the domains we live in, the social interactions that leads to disparities in opportunities, in outcomes, be it education outcomes or health outcomes or political outcomes or economic health outcomes. We have talked about the gender pay gap, so that is fine. We can move. Right. So I'm just going to quickly go through some of the key issues that we are seeing as the African Union CIEFFA affecting girls and women's education. We generally are just seeing we have stratified them into 4 domains: the socio-cultural, the economic, the political and political environment, as well as the psychological. So socio-culturally, we are seeing there's so many cases, there's so many cases of sexual and gender-based violence against children. We saw that during COVID-19, when there was social distancing and lockdowns, children were violated even in the homes, which tells you that sexual violations and gender-based violence also happen in the home, and the home is not necessarily a safe space for children. People think of the stranger danger, that danger comes from strangers, but most of the times it actually comes right in the family setup. And because of our cultural and social inclinations, we sometimes sweep this under the rug. But we have cases of forced and early marriages where children as young as 12 years old get married and they drop out of school. And we have unsafe schools and learning environments where in times of conflict and war, schools are used for that purposes, and they're not safe for children. And we're also nowadays seeing school-related bullying and harassment, and it has also migrated to the digital spaces where children are bullying each other. The mental health is deteriorating. In terms of the economy and the health, we're seeing poverty, intensified digital gaps. We are seeing digital illiteracy. We are lucky, and I am seeing here that there is about 652 of us online. We are lucky because we have access to this resource. We have access to the internet, and we can have such conversations. We can have such classes. But many other young people in the continent don't have access to internet, because it's not only the issue of accessibility, it's also the issue of affordability, particularly in the current economic climate where people are unemployed. We're also seeing lack of resources, right? And inaccessibility to information regarding career options on STEM. Some people don't know when you are talking that there's an aerocraft mechanism, as a career path. People don't know about that. You're only just thinking teacher, nurse, policeman, soldier, and that's it, right? But there is information out there. And it's our duty, all 659 of us here, to ensure that we make the change by sharing this information with others in our communities, in our societies, in our villages. We're also seeing poor menstrual hygiene and lack of wash facilities. Some students miss schools during their menstrual cycle because they do not afford to have sanitary towels. There's no water, access to water and sanitation and hygiene, right? Which is why we must make these drives in schools to donate. We can also make a case to remove taxes on sanitary towels so that they are not as expensive and girls can access them. Seeing limited access to education and educational resources, poor learning resources, books, classrooms, libraries, technology, there's nothing, right? SRH issues. And then under the political and the environmental, there's food insecurity. Some is caused by conflict and war and armed conflict. For example, in the Sahel region, there's been conflict and it has caused displacements and forced migration, both internal and external displacements. Children cannot go to school if they're displaced. And we see natural disasters. About 3 years ago, there were floods, I think, in Morocco. It affected children going to school. There was also floods in Mozambique, the El Nino. It affected children going to schools. But we also see public health emergencies. For example, COVID-19 was a big example, disrupted the education system, where over 152 million children were out of school at one time. And then psychologically, we are seeing trauma on students caused by exposure to abuse, those early pregnancies, drugs and substance abuse. There's no psychological support for teachers and students. All these affect the education system in Africa. And it's our duty to push forward to ensure that we assist the education system, administrators and the teachers or the head teachers, but it's also our duty. I think I fell off. I'm sorry about that. Great. I hope you can see my screen. Yeah, so it's not enough to just talk about gender without noting that it intersects with other inequalities, racial inequality, ethnic, class, issues like that, right? So I will give an example.
Hello, Loretta.
In as much as I am Loretta.
Hello.
Yes. Can you hear
please,
me?
we can see your screen.
Hello?
Yes, we can see your screen.
You can? You can see it?
No.
Can you see it, Emmanuel?
Yes, I
Okay,
can.
let me stop sharing and let me try again. Do you see it?
Yes, it's fine now.
Great. It's important to talk about intersectionality because it really helps us in our community building. I will give you an example. Intersectionality is just a very simple phenomena, but it helps you to understand your privilege. It basically means that you are moving across different spaces and you occupy different power at different levels in those spaces. I will give an example using myself as Lorato. Gender affects me, right, in some of the ways that we talked about. But it doesn't affect me the way, or rather, let me not say it doesn't affect, let me say my plight or my burden is not the same as the burden maybe of a white woman in Europe. We are not necessarily fighting the same issues, although we are both women, right? Similarly, I don't have the same burden as my cousin who dropped out in standard 7, or rather my cousin who does not have a university degree, who stays in the village, with no access to electricity and internet, and maybe who doesn't have money and she's unemployed. We are both women, but the burden on our lives is not the same. In terms of class, as a postgraduate holder, I am valued and seen better in the social class strata more than she would if she doesn't have a degree, right? Similarly, even though she's in the rural area and she's like that, her burden is not the same as her other cousin who's living with a disability and also didn't go to school and also is an African woman in a rural area. So I'm giving an example to try and show you that in as much as we have these burdens and inequalities in our lives, but we have some power by virtue of us. Maybe you have gone to university, or you are working, you are employed, or you have access to the internet, or you are this or that, you hold some power. And that's where you can use that power, no matter how minimal it is, to make a change in your community, right? And that is not to negate the fact that you still carry other burdens. For example, age can be both a burden and a non-burden. Young people are not expected to lead. In Africa, they'll tell you that, oh no, you are just young, you can't lead. That's why there was that hashtag, not too young to run. I don't remember if it was from Nigeria or what, where it was for young people who wanted to run for political office. Ageism affects young people from running for political office, right? But in as much as ageism affects us, if you have a PhD or a master's degree, your voice is more likely to be heard more than a young person who wants to run and they are maybe just from grade 7. So that's also what we mean by intersectionality. I just thought is to share that very important thing, because as community builders, that's very important. This is just an illustration. I think many of you may have seen it, that there's a difference between equality and equity, and we should strive for equity, right? Because equality just assumes that we all need, we are like, gender equality, give women the same type of opportunities, right? But remember the intersecting issues here, where it's not just gender, it's not just because you're a woman. There are also other things. There's the age. Obviously, a woman who wants to run for political office and she's 23, she has more burden than maybe a woman who's 50 and wants to run for political office. Both of them are seen as women, but the other one is seen as more inexperienced and people will not even listen to her. That other one, maybe the age can speak to her. So when you say, I give them the opportunities, you are striving for equality. You have given them the same stool, but you remember that they're not in the same playing field. So this tiny little one, this is the one maybe living with disability in the rural area, cannot speak English, doesn't have access to internet. Then you give them they're still not going to see anything. This one will see, but it's a little bit, and you can see that they're struggling. This one in the red t-shirt, they're even holding that fence. Oh, they're trying to peep, right? But equity is not about competing. It's not about saying, oh, we are giving everybody equal rights. It's saying, how best can we harness potential and optimize economic liberation, sociocultural liberation, political liberation, so that everybody can enjoy watching this nice game of softball. You take nothing from the man in the blue shirt when you give this tiny boy those two things. You take absolutely nothing. He still watches the game the way he would have watched it. And I think it's important that sometimes when you talk about these issues, people think, oh, you are taking from these ones to give to these ones. No, we are saying, let's make the viewing space favorable for everyone. You are not saying equal, because I saw a comment earlier. Somebody was saying, can men and women be equal? It's not about that. It's not necessarily about being same. We're not the same. We have differences, and that's fine. But we are saying we should still be able to exercise our fullness, to dignity, to rights, to development, to social justice, to being. Great. This is the second last slide and we are done. How do we approach gender in education? We need to be gender responsive, where we pay attention to different roles and responsibilities of women and girls and men and boys, and present in specific social, cultural, economic, and political contexts. Basically, everything that you and I have been talking about, we are trying to be to move from gender blindness. Gender blindness is where we don't recognize anything around gender, but we were able to do that. So we are saying, how do we remedy that? We pay attention and we want it to end up being like this, what we see with equity here. That's gender responsive, or any type of responsive, whether it's youth leadership responsive or anything. So your role and your call to action, and this is the last slide, is that you can consciously address gender stereotypes, whether they're in the curriculum, they're in day-to-day human interactions, they're in languages, people around you, you can, when they make these stereotypes, you can like nudge them to also say, by the way, you can teach others. You can explicitly identify harmful gender stereotypes, and you can engage key actors like religious and traditional leaders, your local teachers, the policymakers like the United Nations, the African Union, your members of parliament, the media. When you see things on social media, on Facebook, you can call them out, right? Because you are community builders. You are learning this so that you can do this. And you can activate against legislation and norms and practices, and you can advocate for reform in different ways. But the role that you can play is never, ever minimal, ever. So that is the end of my presentation. I'm just going to quickly go through the chat box to just see if there's anything I may have missed. Should I share with us the PPT? I definitely will share the PPT. Yes, I definitely will share, and I will, let me see if there are any questions before we leave. Boys are loved, girls are raised as a gender bias. No, yes, it's a gender stereotype. All children should be loved and raised, Raho. Henok, if we change those mentioned social expectations, can we change those characteristics of men and women? How about the natural behaviors in being a man and a woman? The socially constructed behaviors, we then can change them. But the natural, I won't say behaviors, I'll say characteristics. They can remain because they would be natural. But anything that is socially learned, it can be changed. Is religion a key issue affecting gender education? Daniel, religion is one of the many issues that contributes, both some negatively, some positively, because religious leaders are well respected in communities. So if they say, take children to schools, we find that their congregations listen. But similarly, if people say, oh no, men and girls and boys should be this because of religion, then we see it affecting them. Is there any chance of completely eradicating the gap for the future? Brooke, there is a big chance, yes, with people like you, with people like Salma, with people like everybody here. We will manage. Thank you very much. Can we have your LinkedIn? Okay, my LinkedIn is, I will just write my name here on the chat box. Where is the chat box? Great. And thank you very much, everybody. I will try and stop my screen sharing and stop share. Where are we? Okay, this is my face. Everybody who's been saying, can I see your face? Thank you very much for your attention. And Emmanuel Peter, I'm going to take it back to you. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you so much, Loretta. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I believe we all enjoyed today's session. I believe it was a great one. And kudos to AU-CIEFFA, kudos to Impactor, and kudos to everyone here. And I wish you all a very wonderful day and also a great experience from all the trainings that you've had. It's not just about having these trainings, but it's also, putting them into practice. So from the one to this very day, we hope that everything you've been taught will actually be put into practice. Thank you so much, and do well to enjoy your day. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye, everyone.